I'm Tammy Kolda, an applied mathematician, and this is Unlocking LaTeX Graphics. Today I'm going to do a quick video suggested by a watcher. This is a follow-up to my previous video on drawing angles and triangles. In that video, I showed you how to draw angles and label them. The user asked how to label the half angle in an isosceles triangle. I encourage you to watch the prior video for more context, and I've linked it in the description. The videos on this channel are based on my book, Unlocking LaTeX Graphics, as well as some bonus materials. Our focus today is on drawing angles and triangles. Here's the preamble for the document that we'll create. I'm doing things a little differently today to make it easier to see in the video. I'm using the geometry package and making a narrow page margin, giving more space for the editor view. So I'm setting the paper width to 3 inches and the margin to 1 centimeter. I'm using PartScript to remove the indentation on the first line of each paragraph. I'm using Hyperref to link the author name to my YouTube channel. The essential package here is TikZ, which enables us to draw. I'm using the Angles TikZ library, which is required for drawing angles. Here's the question from the watcher. They want to know how to label the half angle in an isosceles triangle. Let's start with the isosceles triangle. I'll draw the triangle and label the points at its corners. I'm using the setter environment to center the picture on the page, and the TikZ picture environment is actually the drawing canvas. I covered much of what I'll say in the very first video on using TikZ, so you may want to review that if this is unfamiliar. You might also benefit from just going back to the prior video on drawing triangles and angles. The draw command here is drawing the triangle and labeling the points. I'm starting at the point 0, 0. I create a coordinate A at this point. So the name of the coordinate is actually what's contained in these parentheses. And then I'm labeling that point so that I can remember its name. So this thing that says label is not the actual label of the point, but it adds a little bit of information onto the drawing itself. And so I'm saying label below, and I'm using A in math font. From the point A, I go a relative distance of 3.5 at an angle of 50 degrees using polar coordinates. So the plus plus means it's a relative move, and then I'm going 50 degrees for a distance of 3.5. Once again, I label my coordinate. This time I label it B, and the dash dash means to connect the 2 points. Next, I go from B using relative coordinates again, and this time I go the distance of 3.5, same as before, but I'm going at an angle of minus 50 degrees in order to create my isosceles triangle. So the 2 angles in the corners will be both 50 degrees. At the third point, I again create a coordinate labeled C, and then I add the text label below. And then the cycle command closes the triangle by connecting back to the starting point. So using polar coordinates makes it easy to draw an isosceles triangle. I just have to use the angle I want with respect to the first point, and then minus of that same angle with respect to the second point. Now we have an isosceles triangle with the points A, B, and C labeled. Now let's add a line from the apex of the triangle to its base. Specifically, I want to draw a line from point B to the midpoint of the base AC. ChatGPT will suggest a complicated way to find the point that's on the midline of A to C, but it's actually much simpler to just use the base TikZ library. So I'll add a line here and I'll compile that. So I start at the point B, and then I come down to this funny point, which is A dash bar B. This takes the Y value of the A and the X value of B. At that point, I create a coordinate named D, and then I label it below. I'm using the style densely dashed just so that the line looks a little bit different than the triangle. Now let's add a right angle label at the point D. So I'm going to use the TikZ Angles library to do this. I can just add it right on the same draw command where I drew this line. And I'm going to go ahead and just insert my command here, which is a pick. And it uses the right angle pick specifically with the inputs B, D, A. If you remember from the prior video on angles, the angle is always drawn to the right on the first edge you specify. So I'm going to go from B to D, and then the angle will appear on the right, and then I'll connect to A. The default angle radius is 5 millimeters. I've changed it to 3 millimeters just so it's not so big and it fits into the picture. And notice here that it does have those dashed lines, just like the rest of that command, because we put it inside that same draw command. Finally, I want to go ahead and label the half angle. I can do this using the same angles library. This time I want to draw an angle at the point B. Let me paste the code here. So I am drawing an angle at the point B. So I start at A and go to B because I want the angle to be on the right. And this makes the first segment, and then the last segment is D. I want to label the angle with theta, so I use the pick text option. I also want to change the color of the angle label to magenta, so I specify that here after the draw. I also changed the thing called angle eccentricity to be 1.5. That specifies where the theta goes with respect to the size of the angle. By default, the angle eccentricity is 0.5, which would mean that the theta would be halfway between this point at B and the center of the angle. I'm making it actually 1.5, so it goes 50% past the center of the angle, and that's where the center of the node that contains the theta is. So I hope this answers the question about how to label the half angle in an isosceles triangle. I hope you found today's episode with more on drawing angles and triangles helpful. If you did, please click like or subscribe. I'm recording this video differently than the prior one, so please let me know if you like this new format or have other comments. As always, if you have TikZ or PGF plots questions, please post them in the comments. If you want to learn more, please check out the other videos. I also have a book, Unlocking LaTeX Graphics, available for purchase at major book retailers. Thanks for watching.